Welcome to our presentation. We're seniors in agricultural communication at Purdue University. For our senior capstone project, we've conducted research to learn more about student perceptions of food and agriculture issues. Insights from this research are very valuable to us as professional communicators. In addition, we believe the results of this research that we'll share today will be helpful to the Purdue Ag Task Force, a student committee that's planning the 2014 Ag Week festivities. We hope the research helps the task force to develop a communication plan for Ag Week that effectively targets Purdue University students and hopefully enhances the college's success in informing the university community about perceptions of food and agriculture issues. We appreciate you tuning into our presentation, and we'd like to first begin by introducing ourselves. My name is Samantha Schmidt, and I'm from Mishawaka, Indiana. In addition to my agricultural communication major, I'm pursuing a minor in animal science because I love working with animals. To further that passion that I have for animals, I've accepted a position with the Columbian Park Zoo in West Lafayette that I'll begin in January as a part of their education team.
I'm Tara Fair from Greenfield, Indiana, and I'm hoping to pursue a career in public relations.
I'm Brooke Fruits. I'm from Auburn, Indiana, and I'm hoping to also be working in public relations.
I'm Amanda G. I'm from North Vernon, Indiana, and after graduating in a few weeks, in January, I'll be starting my master's program here at Purdue in Ag Communication.
I'm Austin Gooley. I'm from Mecca, Indiana, and I'm planning on getting a job in 4-H Extension.
I'm Alicia Rohde from Fountaintown, Indiana, and after graduating this month, I will start working at Fair Oaks Farms.
My name's Evan Rich. I'm from Pontiac, Illinois, and after I graduate in May, I'll begin working in seed sales.
My name is Jen Petrowski, and I'm from Michigan City, Indiana, and after graduation in May, I plan on working in public relations and journalism.
I'm Nicole Mudrak from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and after graduation, I plan to go to graduate school.
The major goal of our research we'll talk about today was to measure the student attitudes and perceptions of food and agricultural issues. While many of us have our own perceptions of how the public views food and agricultural issues, it is important to have reliable data to make sound decisions. In the next few minutes, we'll share details about an online survey and a focus group that we designed and carried out to address objectives displayed here. Determine perceptions of Purdue University students regarding issues related to agriculture. Measure university students' reported media use for staying informed about issues. Identify associations among demographic characteristics, university students' perceptions concerning issues related to agriculture, and reported media use. As many of you know, Purdue Ag Week is a series of events hosted by the Purdue Ag Week Task Force, along with agricultural students and clubs, in order to start positive conversations about food and agricultural issues, especially with non-agricultural students. One of our goals in the current project was to gather information about student perceptions on food and agricultural issues, and then interpret that data and be able to share it with the Ag Task Force to help them improve Ag Week for undergraduate students. In addition to meeting these objectives, this effort served as the capstone project for the 9 of us who are graduating later this month and in May. The project provided an opportunity to learn more about social science and communication, which are very important in our field. Now Evan will tell us about the literature review that we conducted before doing this research.
In order to conduct that literature review, we identified a number of key terms that we were looking for, and we searched on Google Scholar and on the Purdue University library system for those key terms. And each of those systems look at a number of national and international databases. So to give you an idea, a few of those key terms included students' perceptions, agricultural issues, and other food and agricultural related terms. So looking at some of the literature that we analyzed, first and foremost, there was a study out of Texas A&M and one out of Texas Tech. So both of these two Texas studies, if you will, aligned very well with what we were trying to do as a group, because they looked at university students and really looked at their perceptions of food and agriculture, and that was kind of our ultimate goal as well. So they aligned very well in those general agricultural topics while remaining broad in their focus. So first of all, the first few key points are just takeaways that those studies had. And the first one is that food is safe to eat. So when students were approached about their perceptions about agriculture, and when food was brought up, most students were generally, they were okay and didn't show any discomfort with the food that they eat on a daily basis. Secondly, on animal welfare, another topic that we included in our research, students didn't necessarily have a stance like they did with the food that they eat every day. They were more indecisive, and as a group had a more general, undecided perspective as far as animal welfare goes. Now, kind of dividing those groups into students down at the Texas study, both ag and male students overall had more favorable perceptions of agriculture, and kind of continuing in, demographics explained a lot of the variation within their answers. So whether that's between ag students and other majors across campus or male and female, demographics were a key component that explained a lot of their variation, as were they in our studies as well. So in addition to the studies out of Texas, we also looked at a handful of other literature, and rather quickly here in the interest of time, one of the first concepts that we drew out was that media is very influential for students. So whether that's social media or your traditional media outlets, and whether or not students know or not, media is usually influential and has an impact on their thoughts and perceptions. And secondly, in general, there was a limited awareness of agricultural policies. So for animal welfare or food or some of the other topics, there was maybe not a lot of knowledge, but at least an awareness that didn't necessarily exist with ag policies. Now overall, there were positive perceptions from both urban and rural students throughout the literature that we read. And there was also the generality that the public needs more education in ag literacy, and kind of that as each generation are kind of following the stereotype that as each generation gets older, they get more disconnected with literature, and that was definitely shown in what we researched. And lastly, that perceptions are based not only on knowledge but on awareness first. So the idea that you've got to be aware of a topic before you can really delve in and develop that long-term knowledge basis. So with that, I'll turn it over to methodology for Tara, Austin, and Jen.
So for our methodology, we developed a mixed method research design, and that included both quantitative and qualitative data collection modes. So the two methods allowed us to really get a depth and a breadth of information about Purdue students' perceptions of food and ag issues. So to measure students' attitudes, we used online survey research methods that yielded the quantitative data. That data allowed us to really gauge attitudes of students across a wide variety of majors and interests in larger numbers. We administered our questionnaire online using the Qualtrics survey, or Qualtrics software, and then we distributed the survey link through social media using Facebook and Twitter. We also provided a link for the survey to students enrolled in the College of Agriculture's Multicultural Diversity class, AGR 201, and that was through both email and through in-class announcements. In terms of the survey, 3/4 of respondents indicated that they learned about it through Facebook, and then another 20% indicated that they learned about the survey via email. As an incentive to take the survey, they were given the opportunity to provide their email address, and then that was put in a drawing. We selected 10 students randomly that could win a Union's Commons gift card, which is redeemable at any Purdue restaurant in the Union. Overall, we received usable responses from 162 students that represented 58 different majors. While this isn't a random sample of students, we feel it provided a really good starting point for discussion and getting an idea of what students' perceptions of food and ag issues were. Data was analyzed using SPS software, in which we generated descriptive statistics as well as performed item analysis on one attitude scale. And now I'll hand it over to Austin.
Qualitative methods provide a rich, in-depth data that allow us to drill deeper into how students' perceptions of agriculture and food issues are formed. Our qualitative data collected included a focus group interview with 6 non-agriculture students. Our entire Capstone class participated in identifying potential focus group participants. All names were submitted to a focus group subcommittee, which then contacted these individuals and invited them to participate. 9 students were contacted and 6 participated. As an incentive for participating, participants were served pizza and a drink, as well as an assurance that the focus group would last no more than an hour. The question route for the focus group was modified from the survey questionnaire. 3 of our team members were present at the night of the focus group to take notes and record the session. Data analysis was performed by identifying responses to each question and looking for common themes. Jen?
As with all social science research, the current project has limitations that should be taken into account in analyzing the findings. First, this presentation is based on preliminary analysis of the data, which is necessary because of our semester schedule. In short, we were forced to meet our presentation deadline today. More in-depth analysis is needed and will occur in the coming week. Second, we know there were always validity issues that threaten the accuracy and interpretation of social science data. We tried to achieve internal validity by conducting a literature review that showed us how our researchers had measured items we included in our survey. After several rounds of revising the questionnaire for accuracy and clarity, we conducted a field test to make sure our questions made sense to respondents and were providing the type of information we were seeking. In terms of external validity, or the ability to generalize to the population, our sampling method relied largely on the class's Facebook contacts or our recruitment pool. As such, it tends to oversample for females, College of Agriculture students, and those who grew up on a farm. Results can be generalized only to the individuals who completed the survey, not to the Purdue student population. Finally, because our research is part of a class project, we are not required to seek IRB approval for our research, and we did not do so because of the time constraints of the semester. However, we did devote class time to discussing the purpose of IRB, protecting the privacy of research participants, and related matters. The privacy of each individual was maintained and all data was handled confidentially throughout this project. In addition, each of us completed the CITI training to help ensure we were using best practices to ensure ethical research. In the following slides, we will provide our research findings from our project, starting first with the online current issues survey, followed by focus group findings. As we look more closely at the demographic characteristics of survey respondents, we see that they were from all Purdue's colleges and schools, with just over 1/4 of them in the College of Agriculture. Our sample, which again is not a random sample, was 77% female. Their ages ranged from 17 to 30 years old, with a median age of 21 years old. About 2/3 of the respondents were juniors or seniors. Finally, in terms of ethnicity, 88% were Caucasian, and more than 90% listed the U.S. as their home country. Finally, we felt that the area in which respondents grew up could have some bearing on their perceptions of food and agriculture. In our particular sample, approximately 1/3 reported growing up in the suburbs, while nearly another third of them grew up in rural areas. About 17% reported growing up on a farm. Brooke and Nicole will now share findings that addresses respondents' preferred information sources and channels.
So as AgCom students, we obviously felt that people's perceptions of food and agriculture issues were influenced by the people around them, and especially by the mass media. In order to better understand our recipients' communication habits and preferences, we incorporated a number of questions into our research. For example, we wanted to find out how much trust people placed in the information they were receiving from various sources. In our survey, we asked students to rank their sources on a scale of 0 to 5, with 0 being no trust and 5 being high trust. Our results showed that the top-ranked sources were family members and Purdue University classes in which students placed some trust. Newspapers and the internet were the next ranked sources for trustworthiness. And our lowest ranked sources in terms of trustworthiness were magazines and social media, in which our respondents placed little trust. And now Nicole's going to talk to you a little more about the frequency in which people use these sources.
When our respondents were asked to evaluate how often they use their sources, internet and social media as shown by this graph, soared to the top, followed by family and friends. Traditional mass media, especially radio and magazines, were used the least, which was consistent with previous research that has consistently found that college students preferred new media over traditional media. We also asked respondents how often they proactively looked for information about food and agricultural issues. As shown, about 1/4 of the respondents indicated looking for information regularly or often, and nearly 45% indicated never or rarely looking for information on food and agricultural issues. Now let's hear from Sam, Jen, and Amanda, who will talk about the respondents' perceptions of food and agriculture.
So as we mentioned previously, one of the major goals of our project was to learn more about student perceptions of food and agriculture. To do so, we felt it was really important to ask some general open-ended questions in the beginning to learn more about how students felt about a lot of different things. We wanted to hear about what issues were on students' minds and find out if food and agriculture played a part in that at all. So first, we asked respondents what current event or issue, if any, was of importance to them. We reviewed the 162 responses and then placed them into categories that you can see listed here. These groupings saw 50 respondents that answered with the none category, followed by 32 responses in the government and economy category. Responses in that category included the government shutdown, government stability, deficits, and job stability, among a lot of other things. Healthcare came in the next category with 19 responses, most of it which were really concerned with the Affordable Care Act. And then the following respondents answered in the categories as listed.
Next, we asked respondents what current food and agriculture issues, if any, was of most concern to them. Again, we reviewed the response and grouped them in categories you see in the table. Out of 162 respondents, 65 people said none. 46 responses fell into the food category, which included answering concerning GMOs, organic food, and food prices. The animals and sustainability categories each gathered 12 responses. Responses for the animals category included antibiotic use in animals, animal ethics, and animal welfare. The sustainability category included answers regarding feeding a growing population.
We also asked respondents their levels of concern and familiarity with several food and agricultural issues that have been featured recently in news reports. Among the items assessed, respondents indicated the highest levels of concern for food prices, air and water quality, and animal welfare. And the scaling indicates respondents were somewhat concerned about these issues. Of the items assessed, respondents had the lowest levels of concern for biofuels. In terms of familiarity with issues, food prices, not surprisingly, were assessed as most familiar, followed by genetically modified foods and animal welfare. Respondents indicated higher levels of familiarity than concern for all of the items except air and water quality. As well, females tended to show greater concern than men for all of these issues we assessed except for biofuels and air and water quality. These are also the two items for which males express greater familiarity than women. We were also curious as to whether respondents felt that mass media influenced their perceptions of food and agricultural issues. About 2/3 of the respondents felt that mass media did not influence their perceptions. Analysis of respondents' open-ended comments to this question revealed a variety of reactions. It would appear that some respondents use mass media mainly as awareness tools, but then further explore topics of their interests on their own. Others reported being somewhat or heavily influenced by what they read, watch, or hear by mass media, and that they also form perceptions based on others' reactions to news, especially on social media. Finally, we devised a semantic differential scale to measure respondents' attitudes on several adjectives describing the U.S. ag and food industry. The 7 adjective pairs were valuable, worthless, positive, negative, high quality, low quality, and so forth, as shown here. Higher values on our 5-point scale indicated a more positive orientation to the ag and food industry. As shown, respondents tended to have mid-range to positive attitudes for nearly all of the items assessed. The valuable worthless pairing received the most positive evaluations, while caring, cruel, and artificial natural received the least positive ratings. Also, as shown by the two trend lines in the graph, students in the College of Agriculture rated the ag and food industry higher than their non-ag counterparts in each of the 7 domains. Next, we'll hear from Austin about our focus group findings.
Results from our focus group provided a unique dimension to our result findings. As mentioned earlier, focus groups provide a qualitative data that can help provide a deeper understanding of our study responses. In this case, university students. Our focus group included 6 non-agriculture students. Participants identified a number of current issues that concerned them. The cost of college tuition was one of the major concerns. Air and water quality were also mentioned by multiple respondents. One of the things that we discovered was some respondents made the distinction between the food industry and the agriculture industry. Our focus group participants indicated not being well educated about the topic. In terms of information seeking, the respondents reported a heavy reliance on family and friends to keep them informed, along with using internet and social media. Some indicated feeling more out of the loop since being in college, sometimes due to constraints of keeping informed. According to one, I only look up news when I'm starting to feel out of the loop, but I have friends who look up the news and keep me informed. Now we'll hear from Alicia and Evan to wrap things up and our conclusion from our research.
Overall, this research project has provided a lot of insights to us, not only about our target population, but also on the various steps in conducting communication research. While we are still analyzing the survey and focus group data, there are some conclusions that we can share with you now. First, it is clear from the data that university students vary widely in their perceptions of current issues, including those surrounding food and agriculture. This finding reveals how important it is to have data on our audiences rather than relying on conventional wisdom. Respondents identified a number of issues on their minds. While not everyone had a strong opinion on the subject, those who did often cited economic issues such as paying for college tuition and finding a job after graduation. While we are in agriculture, we are often concerned about public perceptions of food and agriculture. Our research suggests that food and agricultural issues are not a major concern of most of the university students we studied. At the same time, our focus group revealed a desire for more clarity on food and agricultural issues. Despite this desire for information, only a small minority actively seek information on the subject. In fact, many of our respondents tend to be passive information seekers, often relying on others, such as family and friends, to keep them informed. Finally, our results show that non-agricultural respondents tend to express less positive attitudes than agricultural majors about agriculture and food, about the agriculture and food industry. Whether this difference is due to a lack of awareness or other factors is not clear, but it is important to point out that most non-ag perceptions were still somewhat positive or in the neutral range. Now Evan will talk to us about the recommendations.
Based on our data collections, we'll be formulating recommendations to help the Ag Week Task Force here at Purdue with their annual Ag Week festivities coming up in the spring of 2014, and helping them to better understand and enhance the way that they reach out to not only Purdue students but to the entire Purdue community about food and agricultural issues. And in addition to what we'll be providing to the Ag Week Task Force, I think each of us is going to walk away with the value of knowing the importance of social science research when it comes to really reaching out and understanding audiences. Before we can conclude, we've got a few acknowledgments that we do need to bring up. The first is for our advisor, Dr. Mark Tucker. He really held us all together throughout the research project and was always willing to provide his wisdom and oversight, so we appreciate his help. And also to the Purdue Ag Council for helping us with our field testing, as well as the Agricultural Communicators of Tomorrow Club here at Purdue with their help. And of course, the the willingness of our respondents. We couldn't have collected any of this data without those who took our survey and attended our focus group as well. And most of all, we thank you for joining us today. And on behalf of our entire senior seminar class, I'd just like to say thanks for listening.